Friends, I'm starving. It's late. I need to get something on my plate quickly because otherwise I will be in a bad mood. Maybe that is a situation that you also know, and it's a great opportunity to do a pasta because it's fairly quick. So I thought I would take you with me in the kitchen to bang out an improvised pasta dish. I guess pasta is something you commonly eat as a cyclist, as an athlete, because it's a great source of carbohydrate, fairly easy to make. But also, it can be bland if you don't do it well, and if you cook it well, it's just delicious. So there are a few tricks and techniques. If you know them, you will always bang out the good pasta from whatever is left in your fridge. So let's get cooking. We are about to cook, but first we need to go shopping. Of course, we don't go to a shop. We will do what I call shopping in my fridge. So let's get there and see what is there. Okay, here is what I had in the fridge for a admittedly very simple pasta. This one I actually took out from the freezer earlier. It's one of my homemade chicken stocks, and it's now completely thawed. If it's still frozen, if you do it yourself, also good. You can work with this ready-made stock, or even water will do the trick as well. Though, of course, a chicken stock, especially a homemade one, brings extra flavor and a better consistency to your sauce. Then I just found some celery, some spring onion, some carrots, some tomato. It's not a lot. It's not going to be the most complicated pasta ever, but that's good. Okay, now that we have the basics here, we need some of the basic aromatics that you always need for any type of sauce for pasta, and that is onions and garlic. So let's quickly get these. Here we have an onion, a fair bit of garlic, and then I will get some of the, let's call it the trick ingredients, the stuff that if you have them in your house, it will help you to always make something that is fairly delicious. All right, here we have the stuff that helps to bring flavor to your pasta dish. They are not the exact ingredients that you need. Many of them are exchangeable and replaceable. So let's go through it. Here is a good tomato paste. This says 3 times concentrated. It's the one that I like. It's really good to give some consistency to the sauce and also to bring a good flavor and a bit of tomato-y goodness and umami in your sauce. Then umami, if you don't know it, it's essentially the flavor that you can describe also as richness in your food. And miso is a great source of it. If I do a pasta, especially if I do not have too many ingredients that come with a deep flavor profile, then adding some miso can be a pretty decent trick, as can also be soy sauce, a lot of Parmigiano, many different ingredients bring umami. Tonight we will work with this. Then we have fresh laurel. Of course, you could also use the dried ones, but I get them fresh and I buy them fresh, keep them in the freezer. That's a great technique. So I go for 2 small leaves. The rest goes back in the freezer. Then we have a bit of red wine, which introduces some acidity in the dish, and also, of course, the flavor of the red wine. It's a bottle that I had still open from another thing I cooked a couple of days ago, so this will still be good. And then last but not least, I always have a bunch of canned tomatoes in my house, because canned tomatoes really can save your life whenever you want some pasta. I also buy good ones. If you can get these San Marzano ones, they, to my liking, have the most taste and the best flavor. They are not the cheapest ones, but I think really worth the investment. Okay, at this stage we have assembled all or most of the stuff we are going to use for the cooking, and now it's time to make a little plan how to approach the cooking. So here we have everything for a traditional meal prep: the carrots, the celery, the onion. It's the basis for a lot of sauces that you can do, and for many stocks as well. So we will just do type of a meal prep, add in a bit of the spring onion because it's just another type of onion. And these tomatoes we will keep a bit fresher. I will add them towards the end of the sauce making process, and then we will incorporate these at a later point for the flavoring. And you will see how we do it. Okay, that is the basic plan. First, let's figure out how much we need. As it's only going to be for myself, I will only use 1 carrot, could even be a smaller one, to be honest. This one will do the trick. Then I will take 1 of these celery things here. Maybe I even take just the half one before it gets bad. And I will take the entire onion and the spring onion plus, maybe all the garlic that I have here, minus the very small stuff here. So to have things in order, let's clean up the stuff here. If you work in the kitchen, it's a very good idea to always stay organized and keep things fairly clean. That is what we do here as well. So I prep everything that I need for my preparation. The French who own the culinary language call it making your mise en place. By the way, my wife is French, which means if I use some French slang, I have a good excuse why doing it. It's not to be fancy, it's family. Next step, let's wash all the vegetables that need washing. Once everything is washed, we will get to the cooking. Now that everything here is ready and good to go, let's start to cut it, prepare it, and we will prioritize everything that we need for the mirepoix so we can get it going already on the stove. Let's start with the onion. Okay. We peel the onion, and then once the onion is peeled, we cut it into thin chunks, small dices, whatever you want to call it. Okay, onions are done. Let's get to the carrot. We also need thin dice. The way I like to go about it is I quarter the carrots and then onions are done. The carrots are done. Now onto the celery. You can cut the end piece here, that where it was broken as well. And then I also just halve this and cut it thinly. Okay. This also goes to the mirepoix. And last but not least, we need the spring onions. So for the beginning, I will only use the white part of the spring onion, and I will use some of the green bits as garnish later on. Okay, now that our mix here to start is ready, let's already get it cooking. So for the sauce, you can even start it if you have a big skillet, you can start it in there. I will do it in this pot. We will heat it up and add olive oil to it. So when it comes to olive oil, always good to have it in your house and to have a good one as well. Okay, we heat up the olive oil and then we put in the stuff for the mirepoix. I do it on medium heat and then we will keep an eye on it. So next thing to prepare is our garlic, because this will be added up to the mix down there, the mirepoix, after a few minutes. Crush it a little bit. Okay, just coarsely chopping this garlic. This will be used in a minute. Let's check if the oil is good. So for our purposes here, it's good enough. Doesn't need to be super hot, like if you want to fry something in there. because here we expressly don't want to fry something, but what we go for is for a softening, getting the sweetness in the onions, in the carrots, out of them. So, and I mean out of them in a good way, not have the sweetness out of the pot, but develop the sweetness, and not really going for a browning here. Okay, where's my favorite spoon? Here we go. What we can do in the meantime while that starts is to cut our little tomatoes here. I will just do them in halves because, again, in the end I want something that is not completely cooked down but still has a bit of bite and a bit of freshness in the sauce. And now let's use this little moment that we have with our mise en place for the first steps more or less ready to talk a bit about pasta cooking. So what you do when you cook pasta is usually a simple process where you build a sauce and then you cook your pasta and then you bring the two together, as you will see in the end. Now, when it comes to the sauce, of course, there are millions of varieties of sauces. You can do something like we do with a bit of vegetable, with tomato and stock. You can go the cream route and so on. But I think something that can be easily done if you have a bit of stock and tomato in your house is really a tomato-based sauce where you can add vegetables to it. And starting it with like your aromatics here in the basis is a solid base for the flavor. By the way, I forgot to put salt in there with all the speaking. Now put a bit of salt in there. When we talk about salting, we will build the salt in layers to get to the right point, because that is in general, if you cook food, think about like layering the salt and building up the flavor in the cooking process. And that is actually also what we do here for this simple pasta. Here we give this a bit of time, but we also, okay, you can cook onions. If you do a French onion soup, you can cook it for an hour, 2 hours even, just to get the consistency and the flavor of the onions right. Of course, we don't have the time. It's 7, I'm hungry, so we need to get quicker here. But still, cooking sometimes is about, you cannot rush it. You need to know the timing, and here this will take a few minutes. Okay, but now the next thing I want to do once this is good, I want to introduce the components that bring out the flavor and that also make it so that the sauce, even though it's not a sauce that is cooked for hours and hours and with complex ingredients in there, has a bit of richness to it. And so we can actually go ahead and prepare a little umami bomb sauce base kind of thing. Okay, here when it comes to the tomato paste, even for a little bit of sauce like we cook today, I will use a fair bit, like 2 teaspoons, 1.5 teaspoons. And then when it comes to the miso, by the way, always good to have good miso in your house. That is white miso. It's like the least strong variety of miso. I usually have a white miso and a darker miso in my fridge. As it's a fermented product, in my experience, it really lasts ages. But then by now I use it as an ingredient in so many things, including soups and so on, that really a pack like this is gone quickly. I don't want to overdo it. I'm not cooking like a miso soup, so I take a good teaspoon full of the miso and okay, now we mix this together. It would even be possible if you want like more depth and more flavor, you could add a bit of soy sauce at this point. As will be using the wine, I don't use other type of ingredients. You can really freestyle at this point. The idea here is take ingredients that bring flavor and introduce them into your sauce. And flavor is packed, even like it could be anchovy, could be a bit of Marmite. All these things that bring umami, richness, and in the case of these two ingredients, also help to bring a bit of a body to the sauce. Okay, now the vegetables here, they are going, but they will still need a moment. I would say 3-4 more minutes. So I will see you again in 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, we are back after 3-4 minutes and this is going well. So the next thing that we introduce, as I said before, is here our little flavor bomb. And how I go about incorporating tomato mark or any of these little flavor bombs, I create a little space in the pot and then I put it in the middle. What I want from the tomato mark is that it then really starts warming up, mixing with the fat that is in the pan. There is not too much fat in this one for now, but really start to cook it down a bit. And then I will start like this, and in a minute mix it with all the vegetables and then still keep cooking for a moment. So let's sure nothing here goes to waste. It starts to roast a bit, and this also deepens the flavor in the tomato paste. And then, because we are in a rush, we could even give it a bit more time, but again, I'm hungry. Maybe you're too by now. So let's combine it with the vegetables. Make sure that is later really incorporated. Hot, hot, hot. Okay, I'll give this another minute or half a minute. And then we'll add the red wine. Okay, so we are good. Now, of course, you know from like making sauces, especially if you do something where you roast meat before, the deglazing process where you really make sure that all the brown bits on the bottom of the pan or the bottom of the skillet come out. Here, in this case, there are not really brown bits, but we just incorporate the wine a little bit. Like this, and then we let it really boil away. So what we keep is the flavor and the acidity of the wine. Of course, if you don't want to cook with something alcoholic, you can just skip the step or use another aromatic liquid of your liking at this point. So you see, really most of the wine has vanished into thin air. So what we can introduce now is the next part of the sauce. I will do the tomatoes next. Now, depending on what you do and what your goal is, sometimes I will puree the entire tomatoes with this tomato paste they are in. In some tomatoes, in some canned tomatoes, this paste will really not taste well. In these ones, it is actually pretty good. You can also just use the tomatoes. For the sauce, I use the entire thing in the can, and I use it like this. But what I don't want is these big tomatoes like this, so I break them down with a spoon, and then with the cooking process, they will further break down and just be traces of tomatoes in the sauce. Okay, and then once we are done with this, we get to the stock where they put, here's my chicken stock. So because I want all the tomato out of here, what I will do is I will put it first in here. Oh, it's a bit less than expected. Should be half a liter. It's a bit less. Well, probably even better. Okay, and now we bring this in here. I already increased the heat a tad, but now I want it to boil for a second. So I put it on high heat, and then I will reduce it again. And now is also the time to put in any type of herbs you want to put in there. Now you could put basil or whatever you fancy. Me, I have the laurel, as I said. Didn't have basil, but I do actually have some parsley, so I will put some parsley in there. Okay, I have the parsley here, and I just want to incorporate some of the notes in the sauce. I don't want to use it as a garnish or something, so I will put the entire parsley in here and take it out before serving it. Now the sauce is going, and really at this point you want it to simmer like this, and you could give it a fair amount of time. So depending on what is in there, because it's just vegetables, like if you give it 1 hour, that is the maximum that I would probably do, because after this you don't get any additional flavor out of there. But as I said, I'm hungry. It's 7:20 by now, and so I will actually only cook it for as long as it takes the pasta to be ready. So that is why we cannot go too low with the heat. We keep it at the simmer, because the goal here obviously is to get the flavor out and also reduce it a bit. So on that note, let's get the pasta cooking started. Let's see which pasta I actually have available. Perfect. So pot fairly full with water. There is one mistake. There are actually two mistakes that you can make when boiling pasta. So you may think, everybody can boil pasta. I did it a lot. But first, don't use too small a pot. Like this pot is good for a small amount of fusilli, but don't use it for a bunch of spaghetti or even like a big amount. You want, in comparison, a lot of water to put the noodles in. And then I said there is a second problem. Well, the second problem we will come to now is not enough salt. So when it comes to pasta water, you really want to salt liberally. So look, I have this coarse salt here, and I take really a handful for this little pot of pasta. If it would be a big pot of pasta like this one, I would use 2 handsful, maybe even more. And what I actually recommend, until you figure out the ratios in your specific pots with your specific salt, is that you even taste it. So I don't do it every day because I know the ratios, but let's do it. Let's do it just for the sake of it. So I have a little spoon. Here's the pasta water. Once all the salt is diluted in the water, we will taste it. And the goal is really to have something. Sometimes you will hear the description, it should taste salty like the sea, which is not actually true, because the sea is super salty. I forgot the numbers, but the concentration is actually very, very high, depending also on which sea we are talking about. But it should be noticeably salty, like this here is. It's good. But you saw the amount, right? It's like a full handful of coarse salt. If you have a finer salt, don't take a full handful, because that is very different. But test it. Really try your pasta water, and if you have the feeling, oh, it's really salty, and it's not to the point that you don't want to eat it and want to spit it out, but to the point that you think, oh, that's really salty. That is what you want, because otherwise this water is the only thing that gives flavor to your noodles. And then when to add the pasta, of course, the right time to add the pasta is in the moment when it boils. Okay, noodles in, and you see it was boiling fully, and already with the amount of pasta it stops boiling, and just now it gets back. And once it is back to a full on boil, then we will reduce the heat a bit more so that it keeps boiling but doesn't boil over. Okay, back to our sauce over here. So as I said, now is the good moment in time to start So go to 8, maybe 7 is enough. Now is the good point in time to taste and see where we're at and find out what it still needs. As it turns out, my camera shut itself off just when I was talking about the flavoring of the sauce because it was overheating, so I put it outside. So we are back here a few minutes later. All right, so let's continue where we left off. I tasted the sauce. Actually, we'll do it again. So yeah, we have a good sweetness from the vegetables. By the way, I also realized in the meantime, I forgot to put in the garlic that we prepared, which would have come after the mirepoix towards the end. Could also start it with it because we're on this low heat. You just want to avoid that garlic gets very brown because then it gets bitter if it burns, and this you don't want. Okay, but here we're missing salt. I added a bit already, as you still saw at the end, but I will finalize salt level there. It's not the most deep and so on sauce, but there are 1 or 2 tricks that I like using. I like to introduce a bit more acid at the end, and also for this now a bit of umami. And there are 2 cool ingredients to use in this case. One thing that I always have available is a fish sauce. Fish sauce I put in many more dishes than you would expect it. And then lemon. I always have lemons in my fridge, and so that is a good source of acid in many dishes. Okay, now you see the noodles are boiling. The acid, you don't want to cook something with acidity for too long with the dish. Wine and this technique that I showed you is an exception there, but there we are also going after all the flavor from the wine, and the acidity is a byproduct. Of course, we also already have from all the tomatoes a fair amount of acidity. So this we will do at the very end. What we can add now, because the pasta should be done in like 5-6 minutes, is these tomatoes, because I don't want them completely raw. I want them to be cooked a bit. So we throw them in. Actually, if the camera wouldn't have switched off, I would have done it a bit earlier, but it is what it is. I will already put some pepper in here, because of course pepper also always good. Okay, now we're just waiting for the pasta to finish cooking. This will be 3-4 minutes. See you in a few minutes. And we are back. So the pasta is not yet done, but that is actually important, because for the technique that I show you next, you want to pull it just a few more minutes before it is al dente. And also what you want to do is you want to reserve pasta water. Oh, this cup is not clean. Our dishwasher sucks. So I take here a cup and I reserve some of the pasta cooking water, which we will need for the sauce. And then the colander is prepared here. Okay, so pasta is out, and what we will do is we will finish cooking it in the sauce, so that really the pasta can mingle with the sauce and all the flavory goodness comes in all the little corners of the pasta. And that is really something I do with almost every pasta dish I can imagine. Now we really want it to be cooking, and we will also incorporate a bit of this noodle water. It's one, if your sauce would use too much, you can save it with this. It's also a source of salt, right? And it brings the starch from the noodles, so you introduce a bit of the starchiness into the sauce. So that is a very good technique. Of course, you don't want to make it too liquid at this point. And by the way, I should have taken out the parsley before adding the pasta. Just my timing for this video was a bit ruined by the GoPro, but no problem. We just take this stuff out now. Chip. So while the sauce is finishing, now is also the moment to do the last bit of flavor optimization. Actually could have done it before adding the pasta, to be honest. And fish sauce, I just take a few drops, definitely less than a teaspoon, and then we will taste and see if we want more. And here for the lemon, we take the same approach. And then we will taste again. Oh yeah. Quite good. Just a bit of salt. Yeah, very good. I mean, it's obviously not the best pasta ever and the richest and most complex sauce, because you saw what we started with, basically nothing. But given what we used in this, it is really surprisingly good. And now it's time to serve it, so we get our plate of food. Okay, we put our pasta and the sauce on the plate. Now, if I would have like a fresh basil or something nice looking as a herb, I would put it on there. I don't have it. I still have the spring onion that we didn't use. That is, look, we have some garnish. Perfect. Last minute green garnish. Here we go. But more importantly, I want to put some additional black pepper on here. And in my fridge, you will find a big chunk of Parmigiano at all times. And that, of course, introduces a bit more umami, richness, and flavor. Of course, I don't want to make it a cheese pasta, but a fair bit of Parmigiano on top. And with that, let's give it a go. Here we are with this pasta. Let's taste it. Yeah, like I said before, it's really pretty good. It's not the best and richest stuff you will ever eat, but for a quick pasta built from basically nothing, it packs flavor and it's a good dinner. Dinner is ready. That was a quick one. If you don't try to shoot a video while cooking it, you can bang this out in like 45 minutes, I would say. And you have a pretty solid dinner. Carbs, some vegetables, everything that you need to fuel. Okay, I don't like saying this. Everything that you need to nourish. Bon appétit.